Hello and welcome to Producing and Consuming OData in a Silverlight and Windows Phone 7 application. This is part 2 of a 3-part series. Part 1 has already been published, and you can check that out on silverlightshow.net. Hello, my name is Michael Crump. I am an MCPD. I blog all things Silverlight, WPF, Windows Phone 7. You can check my blog out at michaelcrump.net. And also, I am on Twitter. You can check me out there at mbcrump. And don't forget to visit silverlightshow.net as they provide the latest in Silverlight news. Okay, to recap what we did in part 1 of the series, we learned how you would produce an OData data source starting from File, New Project, and selecting Empty ASP.NET Application. We generated a SQL Compact 4 edition database and we populated it with data. Then we created our entity framework for model and OData data service. Finally, we learned about basic sorting and filtering of the OData data source using the web browser and a free utility called LinkPad. So what are we going to do today? Today we're going to consume the OData data service using Silverlight 4. We're going to create the user interface, then we're going to add the service reference to our OData data service, and then we will add some code behind to pull the data into our application. So let's go ahead and let's get started. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up Visual Studio 2010. So hopefully you have completed part 1 of the series. If you haven't, you may want to download the source code to part 1 to continue, and you can grab that by going to silverlightshow.net and looking under the articles here, and I'll just zoom in where you can see it. If you go into this article, then you'll be able to grab the source code of part 1. So go grab that if you haven't already, and then go back to Visual Studio 2010 and go ahead and load that project. Once that's loaded, you'll see that we have our completed solution. And with this solution, we're going to add a Silverlight 4 project and work from there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go and take a look at my customer service.svc, and I'm going to right click that and I'm going to select View in Browser. So it may take a second on your machine, and on this one I'm actually using Internet Explorer 8. If everything is up and running properly, then you should see this screen. And as I said, I'm using IE8. It may look different if you're using Chrome or another web browser. So in order to keep things simple, we're just going to use this project that we have already created, and we're going to add a Silverlight 4 application to this. So you just go to our solution, let's right click, and we're going to go add, and actually we need to go this guy, we need to go add, and we need to go new project, and you can look for Silverlight, and then you can scroll up and look for Silverlight Application. Let's go ahead and name our application SLO Data App, and let's hit OK here. Okay, now you're presented with this screen that is the new Silverlight application. What we're going to do is basically leave everything just like it is here, so just go ahead and hit OK. And while that is loading, you will notice that now we have 2 projects in our solution. We have our Silverlight application, which is right here, and then we have our web application. So the first thing that we're going to do is to create our user interface. This is going to allow us to select any of our customers and display a details view. So in order to make things simple, what I have done is I have already created a code snippet that will help us get through this a little bit faster, but what I'll do is I will explain each of the lines. So I'm going to scroll this back up. I'm going to grab my code snippet, and I'm going to paste it over my grid. So now you will see that I have a grid. So I pasted in the grid, but I've determined that it would be a little bit easier if I blew up this screen where you could see the line number and we could kind of go over each line together very quickly. So starting from the top, lines 1 through 5, they're setting up our display to allow 2 rows. One for the list box that contains our individual collection, and one for our details view that is going to provide information about our customer. If you remember our 5 customers that we added earlier. So line 6 contains our list box that we're going to bind the collection to. The display member path tells the list box that we want to show the name column. We also want to give this list box a name so we can refer to our stack panel's data context. Finally, we just give it a margin so it appears nice and neat on the form. Line 7 through 15 contains our stack panel, which represents our details view. So we set the data context to bind to the selected item of our list box to populate the name, address, city, state, and zip when a user selects an item. And on line 16 is just the closing tag for our grid. So now that we have our UI built, let's go back and let's look at Visual Studio, and we can see what this actually looks like. So here is our collection coming from our OData, and this is our details view with each first name, last name, maybe you can see those scrolling down at the bottom, to the address, city, state, and zip code. Now we will need to add a service reference to our OData data service before we can write some code behind to retrieve the data from the service. So I'm just going to scroll back over here. I'm going to go back to our Silverlight application. I'm going to right click on that, and I'm going to go add service reference. I'm just going to click on discover here, and as you can see, it found our customer service that was already in our project. So at this point, I'm going to go down to our namespace, and I'm going to type in data services. And once that's complete, I will be able to hit OK. And it takes it just a second to spin up. And you can use another name besides data services. I just typically use that namespace name to avoid confusion to myself and to others. And also, if this were an OData service that was hosted somewhere else, instead of putting in that port number into that local project, you could use something like a www.yourdomain.com/customerservice.svc. So you're going to notice now that we have a few extra DLLs that were added to our project. Just zoom in on that. And you may also notice how large that this project has become since we have began working with just an empty ASP.NET application. You'll also see that we now have a service references with our data services. Now that we are finished with our UI and adding our service references, let's add a little code behind to call our OData data service and retrieve the data into our Silverlight 4 application. But before we do that, now would be a good time just to go ahead and build our project. So select Build from the top and do a build solution. Give this just a few seconds. I've experienced problems in the past when I haven't just went ahead and built the application, so that's why I am recommended just to go ahead and do that now. So let's go and double click on our main page, .xaml.cs, and I have a code snippet that I have added. So I'm just going to Control V here, and I'm using a productivity plugin called ReSharper that is helping me with some of my namespaces. I'm just going to drill through a couple of these, and as you see here, it added in our using statement with the SL OData out.data services, and now we are just about ready to go. Okay, and just like last time, I decided it may be easier to put this in Notepad 2 and give you line numbers where we can kind of step by step each of the lines here. So lines 1 through 5 is the standard code generated, except for the loaded event. The loaded event just basically created a new event handler called main page loaded. Line 9 creates a new context with our customer entities, which was generated by Entity Framework 4 and passes the URI of our data service, which is located in our ASP.NET project called customerservice.svc. Lines 10 through 11 simply creates a query that returns all records to our collection. We will modify this to create a where and an order by example. Line 13 through 15 creates a data service collection, which provides notification if an item is added, deleted, or the list is refreshed. It is expecting a collection that was also created by Entity Framework. Line 17, we are simply setting the data context of main page to the collection. We'll scroll down here where we can see the rest of this. So finally, lines 20 through lines 22 through pretty much 28, we are checking for an error and displaying a message box. Of course, in a production application, you may want to log that error instead of interrupting the user with a message that they probably shouldn't be concerned with. So now, if we go ahead and we run this application, we should be able to get data into our application. So I'm going to go back to Visual Studio. I'm just going to make sure that this is the start page. So I'm going to set it as a start page. I'm going to go Debug, Start Without Debugging, and we have our application now running. Now if I select Michael, you will see the details is populating as well. So I can select Maria, Joanne, Craig, or Jennifer, and it is working as designed. Let's go back now and let's modify the query. So I'm just going to go back here and I'm going to uncomment these two lines, and this is a where my ID is less than 3 and we're going to order it by the first name. So let's go ahead and let's run this project again. And now as you see, we only have 2 and it was ordered by the first name. So Maria came first and then Michael. So at this point, we have seen how you would produce an OData data source, and we've learned some basic sorting and filtering using the web browser and link pad. We've also consumed the data in a Silverlight 4 application and queried the data with and without a filter. So going back to our PowerPoint slides. So in the next part of the series, I'm going to show you how to consume the data in a Windows Phone 7 application. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me at michael@michaelcrump.net. You can also send me a tweet on Twitter at mbcrump. Don't forget to visit silverlightshow.net for the latest in Silverlight Windows Phone 7 news, tutorials, screencasts, and a special thanks to silverlightshow.net for supporting my user group at allaboutzaml.net. Thank you very much, and please come back for the last part of the series. Thank you.